Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of Factory Talk. Today we have with us Mark Whitten of Spartanburg.
Factory Talk: Secrets of Effective Plant Leaders. Produced by
Mark, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your company?
Thanks, Jamie. Glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. Uh, Mark Whitten, I'm President and CEO of Spartanburg Steel Products in Spartanburg, South Carolina. A little bit about myself. I'm Canadian. Started my career actually with Freightliner heavy trucks on the shop floor. I was an employee on the shop floor, so I have a different perspective in terms of a view, let's say, of management and different things like that, and we'll probably get into that. Had the opportunity, worked with General Motors for a little bit of time, and then moved to Tier 1 with Magna International, and spent 7 years with Magna in Canada. I went to Mexico for 6 years as an AGM, came back to Canada as a general manager. And then in 2015, I came to the United States. I ran a seating plant in Cleveland. And then I was recruited to Margaret, which is another large Canadian automotive Tier 1. I ran a plant in Shelbyville for a few years. Then I took a director of ops role. And then I was recruited to Spartanburg. And I've been here a year, March 5th. Spartanburg is a great company, family-owned business, more than 40 years, same families own the business. We are a steel supplier, welded assemblies, et cetera, BMW, multiple customers, including Magna and Tier 1s. Also non-automotive, so we do Kubota, John Deere, Volvo heavy truck, Mack, CBG. So we've got a lot of, and Honda, but a lot of different customers.
Very good. So you've had quite a history of very large, mature, integrated companies, smaller companies, moved around quite a bit. You've seen an awful lot of different management systems and been at different ends of those management systems. So, particularly important to pay attention to as you enter a new organization, as you have many times. So as an operational minded leader, what are your most important touch points in the organization that really give you a sense of how things are going and where attention's needed?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's a lot of different things. We utilize surveys with employees. We do coffee chats. We've got Ask the President box so people can put anonymous questions in, focus groups, town halls. But most important is walking the floor, talking with the people, observing, listening, asking questions. To me is the most important thing that I can do and the leadership team can do to truly get the pulse of the organization. I mean, there's a lot of other data points, of course, our quality performance, our relationships with customers, the community relationship, our operational OEE. And I mean, there's a lot of things that we look at, but if I really want to feel how the organization is really working, there's a couple of things. And mainly for me is being on the floor and talking to the people. And also, in my past life, a couple of things I look at very quickly in an organization: the current management's behavior. So I observe how management behaves. I go to employee bathrooms and I check out how the bathrooms are. I go to the back of the plant because that's where all the sins are hidden. And in our case, as a stamper, I go to the press pits and I see how things, because that'll truly tell me how the organization is caring for their people, the dignity and respect piece. And how management behaves. And, I've had experiences, I won't say where, but, went to a new organization, underperforming, met with the management team day one, went and walked the floor. I asked them to walk and I follow. As I follow, what I'm doing is observing their behavior. And what I got to see on the first day was, not following safety rules, walking past garbage on the floor, et cetera. So I knew right away what the problem was in that organization, and it was management's behavior, and it was their lack of leadership, their lack of leading by example, and et cetera. So, yeah.
That's great. That's certainly says a lot about you. What's important to you as a leader in terms of the organization and the management behavior. As you do those floor walks, do you have standard work, or is that more driven by intuition and relationships?
Yeah, it's probably more the latter. We are in the process of developing standard work for leaders and that kind of thing. We do have some standard work. We've got touch points and meetings on the shop floor and cadence. We talk a lot about cadence and accountability here. So we do have those touch points. We look at stuff hour by hour, shift by shift, day by day, weekly, monthly, quarterly. So we've got a lot of stuff, let's say, structured. But from an intuition perspective and listening and talking with the people, this is where I truly get the pulse and the understanding, and that is where the organization needs to go. It's a little bit more touchy-feely that way.
Yeah, certainly it tells you. I mean, those are hard things to fake. The press pits and the back of factory, and those are hard things to fake, and put on a show. Either it is what it is, right? So
Right.
they are great places to get a sense of things. And so you talked about management behavior, you talked about culture a bit. What do you see as your role? What do you personally do to help shape the culture once you know what you need to fix or improve or leverage?
Right. Well, yeah, that's a great question, and I would say the short answer is I am the culture agent here in this company. And my behavior and what the pace and the tone that I set is ultimately the culture of the organization. So I truly take that as very seriously in terms of my behavior, how I lead, because it ultimately will transition to the culture of the company. Right now, Spartanburg, we're in a transition, and we've coined it Spartanburg Steel Products 2.0 or SSP 2.0. And this whole 2.0 really is about the future. And what I wanted to do is honor the past, because 40 years of ownership. This company's been a BMW supplier for many years. It's a good company, family owned, great people. I have people here that have been here 40 years. Average service is 10 to 15. So got a lot of long-term service people, and I wanted to honor the past. 1.0 is the past, and they did a lot of great things. But 2.0 is the future. And as you very well know, the future is changing on us, and especially in these times. So we have to think a little bit differently. We need to be more in terms of lean manufacturing and these types of things, all that. But ultimately, in my opinion, culture of a company is the secret weapon. If you have an engaged workforce, if people are behind you, if they understand the vision, if they understand what the measurements are, what they need to do each and every day when they come here, it's an extremely powerful set of abilities, let's say. And this is where so back to your question, I am the change agent. I am the culture agent here. I see my role as that, setting the tone, making sure I communicate clearly, making sure that I am the person that shows the most dignity and respect in the organization, et cetera. And that transitions to leadership. The leadership team clearly understands my expectations of them around that. And we really spend time with the frontline leaders to make sure, because the frontline leaders, and I know, that's probably something we should talk about. Frontline leadership is critical, because every time a supervisor has an engagement, speaks with an interaction with an employee, they're speaking on my behalf. And I need to make sure they understand very clearly that your words and how you treat employees is how they view me as their leader. And so it's extremely important that they understand dignity and respect is first and foremost in this organization. We need to listen to our people. We need to act upon it. We need to hold our people accountable. I mean, I'm very tough on my people, but I do it in a very high level of dignity and respect. So that's how I see my role here as the culture agent.
That's great. I want to come back to frontline leaders in a bit, but just staying on culture, and I really like the idea of the 2.0. I think that's really smart. It's acknowledging all the great things that got them to where they are today, but acknowledging that we have to go somewhere different in the future to be successful. Right. And I think that's an important, especially with tenured team like that. And role modeling is one of the most important things to drive culture. I sometimes like to quote myself. One of my favorite is, if you aren't role modeling if no one sees you do it. So that visibility, which you talked about earlier, of being on the floor, being close to the people, is provides you that opportunity for people to see you lead. So that ties in very well with what you're saying about your role.
Right. And if I can expand, things, leading by example is one of the most important things, in my opinion, for any leader. I can't walk on the shop floor and ask people to do things if I'm not willing to be the first guy through that gate. So we've done things, for example, the parking lot behind me, the management team, including myself, painted the curbs. They need to be painted red and yellow, et cetera. So we went out and painted them this past year. cleaning. We go out for 2 hours a week, every single week as a management team, and we clean on the floor, declutter, clean, organize. And, and the reason, the exact reasons for doing those things is to show the people how important that is, first and foremost, and that this management team is willing to do whatever. I might have a title of president, CEO, but I don't care if I'm cleaning the bathrooms or cleaning the back of the plant or emptying garbage. It doesn't matter to me. It's contribution to the organization. And I want the people to see how the importance of it is. Picking up garbage is one of my biggest pet peeves. I don't think, again, I cannot walk this floor and expect, and I have high expectations around housekeeping, et cetera, but I cannot expect the organization and the people to pick up garbage if I'm not willing to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the guy that's always walking, picking up garbage, et cetera. And I want the people to see that, because then I can hold them accountable. And then I can say, you need to pick up the garbage, because for sure they understand that I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's key. Even as an outside person coming in and coaching other leaders, I'll do a floor walk with somebody, and I'll pay attention to are they picking up garbage along the way. It's one of the things I'm looking for, just from a leader behavior. So that's great. So what are some, you talked about safety and sort of caring for the facility and with things like picking up garbage. What are some of the most important behaviors that you think the culture needs to demonstrate?
Dignity and respect. I think every interaction with whomever it is in this organization needs to be held with the highest level of dignity and respect. Again, we can ask a lot from our people, and I do. We can have very high expectations and hold people accountable, but there is a right way and a wrong way. And I've said this in the past. The easy button is the power, is I have the title, I have the position, do what I say because I'm the boss. The far more difficult is to influence people, to influence them to do the right things. And you have it's more work, it's more effort, et cetera, but it is the right thing to do, in my opinion. So dignity and respect is the cornerstone of culture in this company. There are many things, again, that we look at and we measure and different things, but from a culture perspective, really, it's accountability, it's dignity and respect. And those three, in my opinion, are the keys.
That's great. You can go quite far with that. So, and a key to that is your frontline leaders. You mentioned them earlier as being sort of the representative of you in the organization. So what do you look for effective frontline leaders, whether you're promoting or hiring or sustaining and building what you already have? What are you looking for?
Yeah, it's what I already said. So we certainly want supervisors, frontline leaders who can hold people accountable. But I want ethical leaders. I want them to have credibility, and I want them to have dignity and respect. I mean, those are really important. They obviously, and having said all this, we want the highest skilled people. We want performers. We want drivers. We want people that are going to push the organization. But it has to be with credibility and dignity and respect, et cetera, right? And again, I go back to that same reason. Back in 2018, I presented at the Manufacturing Technology Conference on frontline leadership, very specifically, because I am so passionate, and it comes from my time on the shop floor. As a young person working in a Freightliner, I was a shop floor employee. I was slugging steering gears and frame rails, and I had supervisors. And I'll never forget the good ones and the bad ones. They both taught me some really important lessons, but it formed who I am today. And I believe that the frontline leader is ultimately when an employee answers a survey or tells anyone how they feel about an organization, what they're telling you is how they feel about that leader, bottom line. Because that interaction day by day, if they're treated with respect and they're listened to, and we follow up on their questions and we don't have to say yes. That's the thing I remind this leadership team of over and over. It doesn't have to be yes, but if an employee asks you a question, you need to follow up. I mean, that's part of the burden of leadership. Is as a leader, you need to do that, but you don't have to say yes. You say no and you explain why, and that's okay. But I feel very strongly about frontline leaders. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. They are my voice. They are exactly what that employee thinks of the organization, and me is what the words that come out of that supervisor's mouth and how they treat that employee. So very passionate about frontline leadership.
That's great. So building past that a little bit, looking at the rest of your ecosystem of what you build. Let's talk about metrics a bit. You mentioned those earlier and some of the key metrics. How do you utilize metrics in your operation? How do you design them or select them? How do you utilize them to help drive your performance and your culture?
Great question. So we are in a transition. We're always transitioning here, it seems. So part of 2.0 is transitioning to, and I'll say Funnel Cloud, for example. We're gonna tie in with Funnel Cloud, and that's gonna be our metric system, our software. Right now, it's more hand bombing. I mean, we got a lot of hand bombing of information and data and things like that. So, and that's, there's room for error there. So we want to take PLC data, real time, drive our maintenance schedules based on that, PMs and predictive, monitoring equipment, vibration analysis, all that kind of stuff. So we're very focused on the pulse of the organization in terms of data, and we're transitioning right now to that. So that's in the process. Key metrics. We talk about SQDCM, safety, quality, delivery, cost, motivation. Within that, buried within that are multiple, let's say, data points that we look at. Our cadences, we have morning meetings on the floor where we walk through any safety items. We use the fast response system for safety, for quality. Workforce planning, we look at metrics in terms of OEE and strokes, like downtime changeovers. We do a lot of that kind of stuff and countermeasures. We keep it separate in two ways. What information we share with employees, I try to keep it very straightforward. For example, ahead behind. So we have, if it's an assembly cell, you have a target of X jobs per hour. We have basically screens that are going in there that show target, actual, net, positive, negative. We keep it that way. We don't measure OEE on the floor from an operator perspective because often find management teams don't understand OEE. So we try to keep it very straightforward. From a higher level, from the management side, we look at OEE, of course, we look at changes. So we have a lot of data, but the cadence really is minute by minute, hour by hour, shift by shift. This is how we collect and how we look at the data points. Management review is weekly. Myself and the team, where we really get into all the data. It's a 2.5 hour meeting. We go through finance data, we everything, and we really adjust weekly. Because you can't wait till the end of the month and look backwards and try to make an adjustment. You got to be looking forward. So week one, we look daily, but weekly, are we on target, off target? What do we do? How do we adjust positive, negative? So we're doing that. And then that management review looks at, weekly, monthly, and then we have quarterly offsites where we do some strategy sessions and we make adjustments. So quarterly, are we on plan, off plan? Do we need to make some negative, positive adjustments, et cetera? So a lot of cadence around metrics and data in this organization.
That's great. It's really the two sides of proper utilization of data. It's having effective data. So it sounds like you're cleaning up and organizing that end. And then how do you utilize it? Which, cadence, who's doing what when, right? The cadence becomes really important and really sounds like you have a thoughtful process of building up from, minute by minute, hour by hour, shift by shift, all the way to quarter by quarter. So it sounds like it all starts to fit together as a comprehensive management system.
Right.
So within that, and I just, SQDCM, it's almost, we used to talk years and years ago about just QDC, where safety was a separate thing and motivation and morale was its own thing. But SQDCM is really, a lot of the world taking on a life of its own as a key standard. Within all that, how do you set performance goals? Are they dynamic? Are they short-term, long-term, based on past performance, based on customer needs? How do you think about driving the organization with goals?
We use the 4 disciplines of execution, so Covey's system and we use wildly important goals. So at a high level, and I'll walk backwards. The end of last year, we were setting the WIGs, what we were wildly important goals for 2021. We did set 3 as a management team, and then we have sub WIGs. So we've got the 3 wildly important for the plant, and then every sub WIG is built on supporting those 3 WIGs. That's the upper level strategic way of doing it. And I mean, that's the Reader's Digest, very quick version. Obviously, it took us a lot of time to develop the goals and then to make sure we were linking and looking at leading and lagging indicators and looking at the right things. And we measure those. Those are part of management review. We have them visually in the plant. So we're doing that. Really, that is our ultimate goal setting tool. We use that 4 disciplines mindset. We use wildly important goals. We are using A3s to develop plans, and we're using other tools. But from an overall goal setting, everything is built off the WIGs. And what I've explained, and I learned this in my past life, and I was fortunate to do that, and I was able to carry this forward here at Spartanburg. It's really important that we have linkage to the wildly important. What I've found in many organizations, I'm sure, Jamie, you've seen the same thing. If the goals are all disconnected, everybody's got 30 goals they're working on. I'm pretty darn sure 99% chance you're not going to achieve too much. Mm-hmm. If you're very laser focused and you keep that, inch wide, mile deep, so to speak, you've got 3 goals and each leader has only 3 goals that support those WIGs, you can knock it out of the park. And I can tell you, our fiscal year is ending in October. So we're 5 months into 21 and we have exceeded all of those 3 WIGs at this point. We are exceeding at this time. And I truly believe it's because that's where the team is focused. They are 100% focused on those goals. We're not distracted about, and it's the whirlwind theory. There's a lot of stuff going on every day around you. You got to manage that. But yeah, I would prefer it to be an 80-20. Put 80% of your effort into the wildly important and manage with the 20% on the whirlwind. So that's how we manage goal setting here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And focus does an awful lot to get you across the finish line of performance versus getting started on a whole lot of things. It provides that focus, that prioritization, that digging deep that can really help drive some progress.
I do remember, Jamie, sorry, I learned the hard way because I go back many years and I had a lot of goals and I wasn't accomplishing much and I was struggling to understand why. And it's really because I was putting 2% into everything. Mm-hmm. And you're not getting too far when you're trying to push a rope uphill and you've got all these goals and you can't really. So I learned that. And then when I was taught the 4 disciplines from a great general manager in Mexico, and I started to compress very narrowly, all of a sudden, the progress was exponential. So yeah, it was through scars that I came to realize it's a better way.
As a guy who likes to dabble myself, it can be a big threat to actual progress when you spread yourself too thin. So,
right.
So you mentioned sort of 80-20, 80% focus on the WIGs, on those wildly important goals. But as I'm sure your organization deals with, like everyone else, particularly since the pandemic started, as if operations didn't have enough fires to fight, it's gotten far worse, whether it's employee safety or employees in quarantine or supply chain disruptions. So the firefighting has gotten more difficult, certainly over the last year. So how do you balance, manage that balance between when are you just firefighting and when are you systemically making improvements, solving real gaps? How do you balance that for the individuals, the teams, the organization as a whole?
I see that being one of my most important roles is to keep calm in the organization and keep focus. So we've set up these cadence of accountability meetings, I would refer to them as, and that comes out of the 4 disciplines language. We've got these touch points every day where we go and we walk through that, safety, quality, et cetera. So really, I see my role in those and some of the more senior leaders in this organization, our role there is to keep the team focused. So we can see very quickly, we know very, very quickly when there's hotspots and fires and things going on. We are always putting the parentheses around our people to stay focused here. And we're also diverting resources. So we know if we're in trouble in the press shop where we've fallen behind schedules, and we're heading towards an overtime on the weekend because of it, we'll divert energy to helping that leadership team there get back on track. So we do that via, the daily touch points on the floor. We do that via management review, understanding where hotspots are, but it's really hands-on monitoring and myself with the other senior leaders being on the floor in these meetings, participating and seeing it and helping those teams react. What I found is if we're not doing that, and if I'm not doing that, then the teams start to get a little bit disjointed. And then to your point, the firefighting starts to take over the mindset and they walk away. They forget entirely about the wigs. By the way, we're not perfect. And I mean, we've got a tremendous amount of opportunity to work on. And I for sure would be the first one to admit that. But, as a leadership team and as we stay focused on improving and supporting each other, we're going to make a difference. So, but that's really it. It's hands-on monitoring and checking, bringing everybody, centering them back to the wigs. We do that in management review. We do that in quarterly reviews, keeping them focused on it, making it visual. That's another big piece of it. If the goals are visual in your plant and all of your people understand and your leadership understands, it's far easier to keep people focused to that than if they're fighting fires every day. And fires happen, by the way. Of course they do. I mean, that's manufacturing.
No, that's absolutely. But I liked how you started with calm. I think being able to calm is one of those really important cultural indicators that you can't measure. It's actually hard to observe, but you can feel it. And boy,
Right.
if you get your operation to be calm, it's to me a great indicator of a good operational culture.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, I absolutely agree with you. You want the organization to be what I like to see. When you walk into an organization, you want to see people moving. You want to see some action. You want to see cadence. You want to things are happening. That's important. But at the same time, you sense, to your point, you sense that there's calm and order and organization, and things are moving in the right direction. People are hustling. That's good. But at the same time, there's a sense of calm, and I fully agree with you. And by the way, and better than me, I'm sure, you walk into an organization that's in chaos, and you can feel that pretty much at the front door.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you can feel it quite suddenly when the person you need to meet with is too busy to meet with you for starters.
Right.
Um,
Not a good indicator.
Not a good indicator. So, hey, one last question for you. You've had a very interesting career. You've moved all over the place and continued, an upward trajectory. A lot of the people that watch this Factory Talk video series are aspiring leaders, people that that have a career in operations and manufacturing. What advice do you have for people that are looking to take on a leadership role in manufacturing?
That's a great question. I appreciate that. I wrote about, and it's on my LinkedIn, the burden of leadership, I call it. And this was learning as a young man with my father in particular. My father was an executive, but he was, and I speak about this in the article. He suffered a little bit from depression, and he was hot and cold. And I always remember as a young person thinking to myself, I don't know if it's a good day to talk to him today. Maybe I got to wait till tomorrow. And I always had to select my time with him. And I resented that for a period of time until I understood it. And so when I wrote about this burden of leadership, and this, I'm going to come to the point about leaders, being a leader is a burden. Everything we've talked about here, the effort that you have to put in, the perfection that you have to be. I've explained to this leadership team here that when you cross the threshold, and the threshold to me is when you enter the front door, you need to be consistent. Every single day, you got to be the same person. With all due respect, I don't care if you're having a bad day, and I don't care if you had a fight with your spouse. You don't bring that to work. The employees expect you to be consistent every single day. And I try to lead that in my personal life and at work. And I'm pretty sure you can ask any person in this organization if I'm consistent, and they'll tell you absolutely yes. I am never yelling. I'm never, in a bad mood. I'm always consistent. But the fact of the matter is, I'm just a person, and I've got my own problems as well. So, but you have to overcome that. So what I'm driving at here is, if you want to be a leader, that's great. And I love being a leader, but you've got to be a leader all the time, 24/7. It's not when you come in here and when you leave, you're a different person. You either are leading or you're not leading. And so to me, it's a little bit DNA. Do you want to, and do you have the skill set? And I always recommend leaders, have a foundation. And your foundation should be built off of things like dignity and respect. And you should like people. If you don't like people, leadership's probably not for you. So that would be my advice. I think it's really important. I love to work with young leaders in that. But again, there's a skill set. You got to be good at your job, of course, but you got to have the basis or the foundation of leadership, and that, in my opinion, is always built around dignity and respect.
That's a powerful story, and absolutely dead on right advice. That's the burden, and not easy, but it's what's required, and extremely valuable. So thanks for sharing that. That's a great way to end. Thank you for joining us and talking with us. Wish you and the Spartanburg team all the very best.
I appreciate that, Jamie. Thank you so much.